What kind of legacy are you leaving for your family? Not just for your children, nor even just for your children's children, but for those descendants of yours all the way to the end of time. What kind of legacy are you leaving? Before we discuss this, let me point out something that is absolutely critical for us to understand. And without this understanding, we might as well not even talk about legacy. And that is just this fact. We are here solely because God put us here. If He were to withdraw His breath from us, we would cease to exist. And there will come a day where He does withdraw His Spirit from us and we'll die physically. The question is, what kind of a legacy will we go on to? The types of legacy I want to talk about today are about as divergent as you could possibly get. One is a spiritual legacy and one's a physical legacy. A lot of people are absolutely concerned about leaving a legacy of wealth for their family, a money legacy. They're consumed with it. They want to get their debts paid off, a good thing in and of itself. And then they want to save and invest, again, a good thing in and of itself. And they want to make all sorts of money. And they want to pile up so much money that it not only makes a difference in their life, but that it makes a difference in the lives of their family for generations to come. And by doing this, they often, instead of passing on the intended blessing, pass along a curse. Because for those who leave behind them legacy wealth, enough wealth to where your family doesn't have to work for their living, what they're essentially doing is they're leaving a curse. They might as well be leaving behind a legacy of cancer. Because this type of a legacy, mere money, and especially money enough to where they don't have to work anymore, to where they can idle away their days and just do anything that they want to do. While most people would consider this to be a good thing, most people who've been through this understand that it's not. There's something called the curse of the lottery, where people who are just regular people, maybe struggling to make a living, all of a sudden become incredibly wealthy. And time after time, these very people are doomed by this sudden wealth that they receive. They quit their jobs, they buy what they want, they become bored, they often become involved in immorality, in substance abuse, in all sorts of things that will eventually enslave them. Legacy wealth, if you leave that for your family, so much to where they don't have to work anymore, is going to be something that will eventually enslave them. So think very seriously about what kind of a legacy you're leaving them. Before I leave this particular point about legacy wealth, I'm not talking about something like leaving your family a business that you've started, or a farm or a ranch that's been in your family for years. In such a case, what you're really doing is you're passing along work to them, hopefully satisfying work, hopefully work that will mean something to them. But even in such a case, before you leave your business or your family farm, I would encourage you to find out what they would intend to do with it. If they want to just sell it and then have legacy money, well, don't leave it to them. But if you are leaving them work, something satisfying and significant, that's okay. I'm not talking about that when I talk about legacy wealth. But now I want to talk about the only legacy that really matters in the end, and that's a legacy of service. It's probably been 40 years ago now. I was listening to a preacher, and he had a comment. He said, "I pray for my family each day that my kids, my grandkids, that every generation to follow will be saved." When I first heard that, I thought, well, that's a pretty audacious request. Isn't that an individual thing? Isn't that something that we're supposed to do before God on our own? And of course, it is an individual matter, and he wasn't suggesting anything different. But what he was saying was he was determined that he would pass along the spiritual obligation for each generation to be a servant of God. And I really liked that. The more I thought of it, the more I realized how important that was. I've prayed this very prayer myself for probably close to 4 decades now, only I've adjusted it to this. Now I pray each day, sometimes several times a day, that each generation, from my children to my children's children, to all of my successors down through the ages until the end of time, that they will be servants of God. Not just in this lifetime, but servants for all eternity. And I do that not because I think that God will just force them into something they don't want to do, but because I want to make sure that God is assisting us to make sure that we have within our daily thought process a motivation to serve him and to help future generations to serve him as well. That's why we were created. That's why you draw breath right now. You might be quite offended at the idea that your life belongs to God just because he created you, but you need to get over that. You need to get over yourself, quite frankly. This life is a tremendous gift. I realize that sometimes we mess that gift up to the point where we don't always enjoy it as we should, but we can correct that. God has put you here to serve him, and for those who are faithful in their service, he's going to give the incredible privilege to serve for all eternity, both he and his Son. And he's made every provision for us to do that. He knew that we would sin, and so he allowed Jesus to die in our place to pay the penalty for that sin. You remember that passage, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. He did that because he loves you. And because he knows that this privilege of serving him is the most satisfying thing that a human being could ever do. And he gives us that opportunity, not just for this lifetime, but for an eternity. This is such a monumental gift that it's hard for us to even wrap our minds around how significant that is or how great that is. But we need to think about it. And we need to be absolutely determined to leave our family this legacy of service. But what if we decide we're going to leave a physical legacy? There's a passage found in the 49th Psalm that talks about such a mindset. I'm going to be reading from the King James Version, Psalms 49, verses 11 and 12. And it talks about the carnal-minded man, the physical-minded man. And it says, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. It's legacy wealth, isn't it? Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. When you set your life up to do great things so that you can be honored by those great things, you're going to be like the beasts that perish. They don't have any understanding. They're just dumb animals. And it's amazing how many otherwise fairly intelligent human beings act like dumb animals when it comes to the physical things in life. They legitimately think that leaving behind a legacy of wealth for their family is the most important thing they can do. And so they think that their house will last forever, that the lands they've named after themselves will last forever, that they will somehow achieve immortality in this way. But they're dooming the succeeding generations by leaving them this kind of wealth and this kind of physical mindset that somehow our happiness and satisfaction is derived from physical things. Well, it's true that God gives us tremendous physical blessings that he does want us to be satisfied with and thankful for. We can't give them so much emphasis that we forget what we're here for. And we certainly can't be spending our life to leave a legacy of wealth to our family instead of a legacy of service. One is a legacy of death. One is a legacy of life. One's a legacy that contains a curse. One's a legacy that's an eternal blessing. What kind of legacy are you leaving for your family? In John chapter 6, in verse 27, Jesus said this, "Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. On him, God the Father has placed his seal of approval." Well, Jesus is talking to a large group of people that he's miraculously fed, and now they're wanting to follow him on the off chance that he'll keep on feeding them. And they've made a lot of effort to follow him so they can get the free stuff. And Jesus is pointing out, you're missing the whole gist of what I'm here for, of my ministry. It's not so that you can work for physical things that perish, but it's so that you can work for spiritual things that last into eternity. This is what we're talking about when we talk about legacy service. We're talking about a satisfying life in the service to the Father and the Son, doing things that will not only bring glory to them, but that will help other people as you live this life. And as you do that, you're going to find that your life is filled with such a satisfaction and such a joy that you're going to forget about the fact perhaps that you're not physically wealthy to do whatever you want to do physically. Because when you have satisfying service, well, that's the main thing. And when you can surround yourself with people who have that same mindset, who want to serve God to the best of their ability, you're going to find that they're very pleasant people to be around. As a matter of fact, for those of you who are not yet married and who are thinking about finding a spouse, find a spouse that loves God more than they love you. Find a spouse that wants to serve God to the best of their ability. Find somebody who's already devoted to God, and you're going to find somebody who's going to make a very good mate, a very good husband, a very good wife. And then the two of you can leave that legacy to your children and to your children's children on down through the generations until the end of time. I want to encourage you today, if you have not already, to get this focus clearly in the center of your very being. We need to leave a legacy of service once we're gone, one that will bless our families and everyone that comes in contact with them. God and Christ are worth it. They've given us everything, including Christ dying so that we could have the chance to leave behind this legacy of service. It's a beautiful life, and then there's heaven, there's eternity, if we'll do it God's way. But for those who are focused on the physical, for those who are building up their physical houses so that they can leave a house with their name to those who follow so that they can be remembered from this time forward, they're wasting their time. But for those who are absolutely determined to serve God and to teach their children to do the same, and that your children in turn will teach their children to do the same, and you'll leave that obligation to each generation, well, by doing so, you're going to be leaving them a legacy that truly is worth something. And then there'll be heaven. It's a pretty good deal when you think about it. What kind of a legacy are you leaving for your family? Something to think about, wouldn't you agree? Well, I appreciate your tuning in today. I hope we'll see you again tomorrow. God bless.